Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to look at this week's eclipse through the 12 houses. This eclipse is at 10 degrees Libra, conjunct the South Node at 6 degrees. Here in California, this eclipse will happen late morning, October 2nd. For those in Europe, it'll be more towards the evening. For those in Australia and New Zealand, this is on Wednesday, October 3rd. Thursday, October 3rd. Definitely check out my recent video where I explored the core evolutionary themes of this eclipse. As I go through the houses, I'm going to be addressing two essential points. So we're looking at this Libra stellium in a new phase with the South Node relative to the ruler of this eclipse, Venus in Scorpio. So on the one hand, we're going to be looking at the core attachment, addictions to our relationship patterns, addiction to affinity, and where there might be a holding on relative to a fear of change. This semi-sextile with Venus and the stellium is really important to understand because wherever this eclipse is, we're going to have transiting Venus just 30 degrees separating from this eclipse point. Kind of in that 30-degree phase, we're beginning to cultivate a lot of self-awareness, right? Something that's sort of unformed and undefined becomes a little more clarified. And so this Venus moving just beyond the semi-sextile, gradually moving towards the semi-square, trining Mars, moving into an opposition with Uranus is very important. And I didn't say this in my last video. It's important to consider as Venus moves into a opposition with Uranus, and I'll just show you this. This is a useful long-term perspective to keep in mind. As it moves into this opposition with Uranus, we're also going to see Venus essentially exacting and then moving beyond a semi-square with the South Node. So the exact semi-square happened at 21 degrees Scorpio. That's 45 degrees from the South Node. Basically, this movement from the 30-degree aspect to the 45-degree aspect, since it's also the ruler of the South Node of all of this Libra, does speak to a refinement and a clarification of self-awareness. So we're not going to be focusing on Venus through the houses. That might be a nice video to make, especially as we go into this opposition or the semi-square. But keep this in mind because all of the Libra dynamics that I'm going to be speaking to is going to be further conditioned by the growing psychological self-awareness of this Venus in Scorpio, which increasingly over the next couple of weeks will symbolize a focusing of clear attention, getting to the bottom line, like, oh, this is what's going on. These are the core psychological fears. This is where I've been holding on. This is where I've been maintaining these patterns of manipulation, addiction, diminishing of value, holding expectations for myself and others because of a fundamental fear of change or a need to maintain whatever I identify as fundamental for my security. It's really uncovering a lot of self-awareness. In fact, after this eclipse, the moon will enter into Scorpio, joining this Venus. So really the first couple weeks of October are rich with this kind of psychological self-awareness. So just keep that in mind as I look through these patterns. So I'll be addressing the attachment patterns of, Libra. I'll also be speaking to where there can be a lot of fruition in our relationships. Now, naturally, this will happen through clear and honest and authentic communication. This Mercury, Juno, in this new phase with the South Node is really speaking clearly, again, relative to that Venus, getting to the bottom line. What needs to be addressed? Where can we be listening with greater clarity? The commitment to balance in our relationships. And the energy of balance is a felt sense. Right? We feel what it's like to be in balance. We feel what it's like to be out of balance, to say yes to things we don't want to say yes to, or to be holding these polarizations that don't feel right for us. So as I go through the houses, you can really think about wherever this Libra is in your chart, in all realms, all kinds of relationships in your life, this is where a lot of fruition and clarity, where we can actually become leaders and become clearer in our commitment to nurture a balanced state in all of our relationships. So as I move through these 12 houses, I'm also going to be speaking to the polarity, the North Node, because this North Node in Aries, being it's the North Node, is going to hold a strong symbol for where we need to be growing. We have to make sure we're embracing that North Node Aries polarity, which says I got to embrace my own life direction and be true to my own path. So we have to claim our own freedom, and that might bring up a lot of insecurity relative to the attachment patterns of that Libra South Node. And just remember too that the fruition that can come forward with this Libra can just be a clarity in our relationships where we see things as they are. It can also be specific people or relationship dynamics emerging that allow for sort of intellectual, psychological clarity that allows each relationship to be what it is. It's important to understand with Libra that, in a sense, every relationship has a purpose in a relative way. There are particular, specific, unique human dynamics that want to be explored and worked out within the context of each relationship. And within Libra, we really need to listen to that. What are the unique contractual soul dynamics that we're learning to honor and respect? When we respect and yield to them, right? Maybe they're not what we wanted or what we expected or what other people expected. But when we yield to the unique adjustments that are relevant and needed for each relationship, it lands inside as a sense of, we're doing the work that we are meant to do. And it's always helpful to remember sort of the natural inconjunct between Libra and Pisces, because Pisces speaks to unconditional love. And we can stay in that love, in that unity, even while we're working out these points, right? We will often get confused, and just appreciate this new moon is moving into an inconjunct with Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So this might also be bringing up a lot of our spiritual idealism or confusion relative to either where we're sacrificing on the basis of love or holding these ideals or these standards or these constructs or these judgments of what we think is supposed to be, but we're not allowing the circumstances of our life to really adjust and evolve and open up according to that. So Libra isn't implicitly about unconditional love. It's not antithetical to it, but it's about the specific dynamics and agreements and adjustments that are necessary within our relationships. But as we're learning that, we can stay grounded in a deep respect and appreciation and gratitude for one another. There's a really beautiful teaching in A Course in Miracles that just focuses over and over and over again that we owe to each other absolute gratitude. We are each other's savior. We redeem each other. Because through relationship, through freeing each other up, through this commitment to keep our attention rooted in seeing the divine in another, even while we're tending to the specific human circumstances in our life, we really get to be purified. We really see how we are each this gift and this blessing to be refining our own perceptions, to be refining our own minds. Okay, so with that being said, I think we can really hold this appreciation, this awareness that as we're meeting the specific content, the challenges and the gifts and the whatever, they're all the same, that are arising within the context of our relationships, it's all leading towards love, towards a place of peace and balance. And we can just honor and respect and give gratitude to one another and the pieces that are emerging. Eclipses can be great for moving through a lot of energy. So let us stay in our faith and our trust and our alignment and be available for the gifts that want to come through this week, no matter what they look like. One more statement I'll make. Just again, appreciating this series Mars opposition. We're going to be looking at, and we are looking at this time for sure, many core early life conditioning patterns, the need to embrace a sort of self-parental quality and learning how to be alone in a more intimate way. Okay, so before I jump into the eclipse, I want to just promote a few things that are happening. The second annual Evolutionary Astrology Conference is happening this week. We begin on Thursday, just after the eclipse. So many of you might be new to my channel. If you're interested in evolutionary astrology, this might actually be a really nice way to be introduced to the larger EA community. I'll be coming together with about 14 other teachers from around the world for this 4-day conference, teaching on some really fascinating talks. So here are all the pictures, and I'll just quickly go through the schedule of the conference so you can get a sense of all the talks. Why we choose our family from an evolutionary perspective, basic planet sign house synthesis. Pluto process, the involutionary and evolutionary process, the going within before the change. Uranus, facing our shadow in Pluto transits, a talk on 12th house confusion versus spiritual or pathological sacrifice, a talk on Cassandra, sexual healing focusing on Mars and Venus with Jason Holly, another Mars-oriented talk also addressing the nodes of Mars, which is, Mars being the leading edge of our evolutionary growth, very active right now with Mars squaring the nodes and the upcoming Mars retrograde. I'll be speaking on Venus tending to the inner garden of the soul, just the need to be grounded in self-esteem and self-value, and really understanding the full archetype of Venus from an evolutionary perspective. Healing crisis as a catalyst to evolution, karma yoga, secondary progressions, presidential elections in the USA, that'll be interesting, and Patricia Wolf speaking to trauma and the evolutionary journey of the soul. She does a lot of work with past life regression. So it's going to be all in all a very fascinating talk. You can check it out below. You can register with the coupon code RE10 to get 10% off. So I'm going to be giving a free promo class October 13th to a class series on planets that square the lunar nodes as taught through evolutionary astrology, according to the teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green. You can sign up for that class. I also have my self-study program that is available for enrollment all the time, every year. For those that enroll in the self-study program, you can upgrade to the live program that begins in March of 2025. So you can check all of that out in the description below. Okay, with that, let's get started. Libra in the first house. The issue here is there may be a very strong instinctual reaction to just kind of get involved in things without really thinking about whether it's needed or whether it's purposeful or useful or helpful. Saying yes, but do you really want to say yes? Do you really feel available? The Libra issue is anything can be considered, all perspectives, all points of views. When you show that in the first house, a soul might be getting involved in mediating justice, mediating fights, mediating different kinds of issues, or being available to help out. But the issue with the first house is it's very instinctive, it's very impulsive. You might be getting involved in a relationship and realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not that available. I need to come back to myself and kind of embrace more of my own freedom. There might be a fear of saying no. And this can be a really strong flip-flop dynamic. Of course, we're looking at sort of opposing house sign dynamics, Libra and the first house. The key is to be able to sort of tune in with, what am I available for? Where am I going? What's my purpose? What's my intention? There's a great need to be a leader of very clear communication. And even if you find yourself moving in a certain direction, the ability to say, hey, wait a minute, I realized I was going and doing this, but actually it's not what I want to do. There might be a sense of I'm not allowed to be as free as I am, or I have to kind of go into relationship experiences but sacrifice or let go of my need for freedom to be able to make my own new choices. Really, you are allowed to be free. The key is, are you doing the work necessary within all of your relationships to nurture and protect that freedom? So you need to be a leader of clear relationship communication, honesty and transparency and clarity within your relationships. That North Node, again, in this case, being in Aries, but in the 7th house, there can be a buildup of anger relative to being out of balance. You or another person might be holding that anger polarity if there is that state of imbalance. It comes back down to what is my path and what is balanced, and not being afraid to initiate whatever is needing to be initiated. What can also be happening with Libra in the first house, a whole lot of fresh energy might be opening up. This might be a letting go, might be a saying yes. It might be new opportunities or possibilities that will emerge because there's a willingness to feel the freshness, the present moment, the edge of this is a new moment, this is a new experience. I'm not defined by the last 5 minutes. Again, being grounded in this commitment to come into a relationship from a place of personal integrity and freedom. So a lot of new developments and clarity around where we're going, what's my role, what's my purpose, what do I need? Feeling more authentic. I think Libra in the first house very often faces this general conflict between, I want relationship, I want to be in harmony. I want to be able to feel good in my affinities and the balance with other people, but I need a lot of freedom to explore. But what does that look like? How do I embrace that part of myself? And in what ways am I needing to explore while also honoring the unique agreements and needs of all of my other relationships? And that's a matter of just being true to ourselves. Sometimes we're afraid of disappointing other people, and so we don't really allow ourselves to have the kinds of desires and needs that we have. So that's something that can really be opening up and healing and clarifying during this time. Libra in the second house. The challenge with Libra in the second house is our own self-value, second house self-esteem, self-worth can get all kinds of intertwined and sort of entangled with being liked, being pleasing, being wanted by others. So self-esteem can kind of get stuck and entrapped and sort of fixed and stagnant in being overly identified with pleasing other people. So the key then is to be really focusing on communication, on clarity, on dynamics of relationship, and meeting other people in a very authentic way that allows for each relationship to fundamentally be grounded in a state of mutual self-reliance, which says, I'm here because I want to be, not because I'm needing to be. I'm giving because I want to. I'm not attached or addicted to, I'm dependent upon you liking me or being pleasing to you to establish my own self-value and self-esteem. Libra in the second house can also have a very instinctual, sort of primal, it's like procreative, a very biologically oriented, very sensual. Because Libra second house, on one level of interpretation, is the procreation of the species. We need to be attractive to and appealing to others so that we can procreate. So this is another piece to really work through. Our sense of value and self-esteem can be very primarily instinctually sort of built into our very human biology, because if I'm not wanted or attractive, the human species or my own biology is going to come to an end in this lifetime. So we're learning to redirect a value, not in becoming overly focused on the outside. But this also means really becoming aware of the karmic entanglements and energetics that we are creating for ourselves when we become sexually or intimately involved with other people. And not just sexually or intimately, when we're sharing our energy or becoming entwined with others. That polarity to Aries in the 8th house says, make sure you're nurturing and protecting and defending your own soul sovereignty and freedom. Because Aries in the 8th house says, I need the freedom to say no and to say yes to whatever is necessary to further my own evolutionary growth. The weight of, oh, this is very pleasurable and comfortable, and I like this, and I like how I feel. There can be a shallowness or a sort of superficial quality to Libra in the second house, not just based on pleasing other people, but, it's comfortable. We like it, which itself is like indirectly rooted and connected to that biological survival impulse. So there might be a need to kind of claim a deeper soulful commitment to evolve and not fall into patterns of comfort and familiarity or addiction to self-value and self-esteem through others. What can really be emerging fundamentally is how in our relationships we are able to give and share in a way that really enhances and supports our own journey. If we're tending to the garden of our own soul, that Libra dimension are all the ways in which we're all able to support and nurture the growth of our own garden. And so this is a place of clarity and congruency and pleasure and joy and healthy connection, but that's rooted in a shared mutual soul agency. That's very important here. Libra in the 3rd house. The issue with Libra in the 3rd house is, metaphorically, you can always be answering and overstimulating your mind and your nervous system to just meeting people's needs. So there can be a sort of social duplicity and exhaustion that happens in, I know how to be what I need to be around this person. I know how to be who I need to be around this person. So always being flung in all kinds of directions. And the question is, the ground is, what's my truth? So the Aries polarity in the 9th house is, am I being true to myself and my own path? Or am I always accommodating to be pleasing to other people? There needs to be clarity in communication, authenticity in our communication, in our listening, in our sharing, so we're not falling into patterns of people-pleasing and becoming overly socially accommodating. There might be a need to say, no, I'm not available. right? Always answering emails or always responding to the mental input that other people are bringing forward. Perhaps we've learned, I need to learn how to speak in a way that others will like it, that others are agreeable. But the question becomes, are you being honest, right? Are you saying what you need to say because that is, how you've learned to gain approval? But is it honest? Is it true? So really working on kind of clarifying the maybe the right use or misuse of mental and social energy and grounding in a more authentic and honest place. So then there might be a need to say, I'm not available, or simply don't answer the phone. No one said you need to. A lot of the relationship patterns and addictions to affinity here might be self-created by way of our own internal expectation or expectation we put onto others to be available. I'm not always available for a conversation, and others may not always be available for a conversation right now at any particular moment in time. So there's a way in which all of our social relational energies can be put into a more balanced state by way of really referencing our inner soul, self-guidance, and leadership, and not always being available. Positively, what can really be coming through right now are a lot of really clarifying conversations. Again, that Libra dimension of seeing many perspectives, many angles, there can be a lot of mental confusion. What do I want? Which perspective? They said this person, this said this person. What's really true for me? So having clear conversations where there's authentic listening, but going within, doing that Libra work to kind of check in with oneself, so that we're not just responding or agreeing. This will really allow us to kind of see multiple perspectives, multiple angles, multiple pathways even, and not needing to figure it all out, not needing to organize it all in our minds so I know who I'm supposed to be, but allowing everything to be as it is, allowing the questions and the conversations and the information to just be without stressing ourselves to resolve and figure out and to know who we need to be. This can allow pathways to open up in our relationships and the roles that we play in life that are a lot more freeing, that make a lot more sense, and are a lot less stressful. The kind of congruency and clarity will emerge through that. Libra in the 4th house. So this can be a very strong addiction to the state of security and affinity with other people. Are we okay? Do you still like me? Do you still want me? Is it all right? There's that need to metaphorically stay under the blanket in bed in a cozy and warm place, but this can easily create a very strong non-growth situation. So this Mercury-Juno new phase is really emphasizing have very important and authentic conversations, just looking at the pieces. We need to be able to embrace our own life, your time. Like, don't just stay in bed all day. Aries in the 10th house, you got a life to live. There are things to do here. And that might mean we're not meeting people's needs, or we're going to have to face our fear of separation, right? We can build a relationship and a way of being that's grounded in stability, in a sort of a way of bonding with one another that isn't needing to hold on and constantly making sure that we're okay. Being able to say no, being able to have certain boundaries and not always falling into addictive patterns. Now, this really highlights two extremes. One extreme, we're holding ourselves back because we're playing the parental role, or we're like always needing to make sure the other person's okay. Or two, we don't think that we're okay, and we're needing the other person to constantly give us that kind of assurance. In both cases, it's a very strong, sort of block of energy. So freeing ourselves from that really says we get to care for and nurture and provide for each other according to what we truly need and what's helpful, but what am I available for? We need to be able to embrace healthy separation so that the nurturing and the caring and the ways that we bond and support and depend upon each other is grounded in a healthy soul sovereignty. Otherwise, it's just a dependency, and it will bring up a lot of anger, right? Like, whenever we sustain strong emotional dependencies in this situation, one person is going to feel overly stressed out, compromised. I don't have any time for myself. I'm stuck in this relationship. And the other person's going to always be in a state of fear. I'm always afraid of being hurt. So we have to mature and learn how to be in a relationship from a ground of I know how to provide for, identify, and listen to my basic needs. Again, if you take this outside of a personal domestic relationship, just think about the ways in which we might be familiar with sort of sustaining these patterns of making sure everyone's always okay. Are you okay? Are you okay? And we might be overgiving unnecessarily so because we're so afraid of hurting other people, or we're needing other people to always be tending to us. So this is something to be tuned into. The fruition of the signature is, again, just what does it look like to receive the gift of relationship? Massage, cooking, cuddling, listening, but we need to have consent. Are you available for this? Is this aligned? And when there is, when two people are coming together in that way, so much emotional healing and nurturance can truly be shared in a clean and clear way. It's truly a gift. Libra in the 5th house. So imagine in this case, a child that is needing to be seen, needing to be loved, needing to get the attention of mom and daddy. This child might learn, how do I look? How do I appear in a way that's pleasing and maybe entertaining so that I'm liked? So there might be a dynamic in our relationships of having brought forward this pattern of, as long as I am, making people smile, making people laugh, or making people happy, then I know I'm going to be liked and loved and adored. This can be an issue because a lot of our needs for love and affection and attention, being seen, being valued, might be displaced on who we need to be, the roles and the ways that we need to perform within our relationships. Two dynamics can emerge here. That part of ourselves that's needing to be loved and adored and appreciated, we might just sort of lose our freedom, lose our agency when someone shows up in our life and is like, I really love you, you're so beautiful. Then it's like, oh, good, I want to be with you. Right? Just kind of moving in whatever direction will feed that need to be important, to be special, to be appreciated. Or within our relationships, we might be constantly disempowering ourselves by way of needing to make sure we're validating, encouraging, and elevating the people that we're with. On the other hand, it's also, we can find ourselves in these situations where we're just sucking that energy from other people, needing a lot of affirmation, needing constantly to be validated, to be seen, to be appreciated. So in all of these cases, think about that Aries polarity in the 11th house. You are who you are. It doesn't matter whether other people get you, understand you, even notice you, or recognize you. You are who you are. So what is it like to be in relationship where the generosity and the creative essence of your being is shining through your heart, and you're giving, but you're not giving because you're trying to get something? That could be the issue of Libra in the 5th house, where the giving is, I'm giving what I'm giving to you because that's how I want to be treated and given. So I'm just kind of making you feel special because that's what I'm needing. There might be a lack of true intimacy, but what is it like to truly give to another, to really see and appreciate their uniqueness and to want to see them, to want to encourage them, but not because you're seeking something for yourself. The true teaching is in being a generous, expressive, interested, intimate being. You give that, you share that, and you learn about your own generosity. You learn about your own wealth through the giving process. You don't need to be so concerned about what people are giving or what you're getting back in return. On the other hand, if you're in these patterns of maybe not being seen and always, needing to accommodate and please other people so they can finally give you attention, what is it like to just stop that? What is it like to say, you know what, I'm not available for this. Really? But you're my king, you're my queen. Okay, I don't want to do this. And I'm also not a king or a queen, I'm just me. To let the ways in which we have lost our power just so we can be special, but almost diminishing ourselves so in some sort of distorted way we can be raised up. Be true to your own uniqueness, and you don't need to do anything to prove or to gain the validation or worth or approval of another person, ever. Because our value doesn't come from that anyway. That's not where it's rooted. There might be a lot of fruition in our relationships and really being able to recognize, on the one hand, maybe I have a purpose, maybe I have a unique gift or skill that I can really bring forward in relationship or with children, some sort of creative capacity that I haven't fully developed, that now I can really begin to bring into fruition. Maybe there are projects or collaborations or fun things that I can do with other people when I'm not so hooked up or sort of fixed in, am I important, am I special, am I seen, or the ways I'm giving my power away to receive that kind of validation and appreciation. Libra in the 5th house is amazing when it comes to play. Like, you can just play, like two children hanging out together, and they're not looking to the other to validate their importance. They're just like, cool, you're here and I'm here. What do you like doing? What do I like doing? And so there can be a state of sharing where two whole unique beings are collaborating and sharing together. And it's just absolutely beautiful. What can come forward is a quality of creativity that comes through the partnership of two souls just being excited to play and to be here. It's about the entitlement to exist, to enjoy life, and to engage in the beauty and the joy of relationships. All the gifts that come when we're not stuck in, who do you see me as being? Libra in the 6th house. So we can have two issues here. On the one hand, there can be a sort of masochism in relationships, over-giving. What do you need from me? What do you need from me? And sort of this internal hyper self-criticism, wherein we're always going to be making ongoing adjustments to making sure we're doing everything perfectly and just right. But there can be a lack of healthy boundaries, healthy no, overcompensating because of an internal sense of deficiency. So let's say you're a counselor, right? Or whatever kind of healing modality. Libra in the 6th house might be not able to stop when it's time to stop. You're giving your techniques, your tools, your practice, but I didn't do this right, or I didn't message this idea clearly enough, or there's still something left unhealed. And so you'll just keep on going. And so there's no real relationship. You may not actually be truly helpful because the inner orientation is more about this internal sense of insufficiency. I'm not perfect. I didn't do a good enough job, so I'm going to keep on going. But that overgiving could actually paradoxically create more crisis and problems than it might actually do good. The other dynamic with Libra in the 6th house is there might be relationship dynamics that simply need tending, right? Issues of neglect, relationships of the past, current relationships where things need to be said. Dynamics that were sort of brushed under the table and kind of ignored, they're not going to go away. And this could be, agreements that were made, or projects or initiations or commitments that were initiated but were never brought into completion, or ways in which we're sustaining patterns within our relationships that are actually a little bit stressful, not actually healthy. Tend to what needs tending. Eliminate any kind of masochism or not good enough, or on the other end of that, there can be this hyper sense of control. I need you to fix all these things or do all this work on you so that I can have a better life. Jeff Green speaks about the 6th house archetype as being this dichotomy between masochism and sadism. Masochism is my life screwed up and it's my fault. Sadism is my life screwed up and it's your fault. And so there can be this endless working out. This is a Libra thing in general, but in the 6th house, oh boy, endless working out relationship issues and details, and you did this, I did this. It's like Aries in the 6th house, just let go. Let it go. Let go. Just deal with the thing that needs to be dealing with. Don't hold on to perfection, whether it be in yourself or another. Aries in the 12th is surrender to the ocean waves and be existentially out there alone in a world that you have no control over. Let everything just be as it is and tend to what needs tending. So in this sense, there can be a lot of healing and congruency and clarity that comes in our relationships by being willing to tend to whatever work is needed, acknowledging mistakes, dealing with issues of procrastination, correcting or making adjustments within our personal relationships, within the work that we do, and then let go of the rest. The key is to be moving towards improvement and allow it all to unfold and heal on its own. The beauty of this signature can be a sense of I'm restoring my health. My life feels more congruent because I'm not getting entangled in unnecessary complications or work or perfectionism or issues of control. I'm actually moving towards a state of healing and improvement And that allows me to feel in balance with myself and within all of my relationships. And that's the key here. Then we can really feel like we're being in service, our relationships and the work that we do in this world, that it's about healing, not managing or perpetuating continual crisis. Libra in the 7th house. So here we're obviously dealing with the realm of relationships and all kinds of relationships. In my training, 7th house corresponds to the full scope of human relational experience, not just intimate partners. So we're going to be expanding this to consider what are the ways in which we are in relationship with the people that are in our life right now, the specific relationship dynamics and the people that are really relevant to our own evolutionary growth will be strongly emphasized and highlighted. Our addictions to affinity, to being liked, to being approved of, to unnecessary compromise will really be highlighted. This emphasizes relational communication, intimate communication. What is true? What's alive? What are the pieces to speak to right here? That Aries first house polarity, of course, speaks to be a leader of your own path. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to experience a sort of existential aloneness where you're not necessarily going to fall upon the assurance of other people agreeing with you or being pleased with what you like. The key is for each relationship to be a vehicle that truly serves each soul's growth in this lifetime. We don't want to give value or meaning to our relationships for its own sake or for how it makes us feel, because then we become very entangled, we become very stuck. Because then we become very entangled and stuck, and we're going to feel this pressure to somehow break out of it. So we can find ourselves in two extremes with Libra in the 7th house. Either we're holding these expectations of other people to show up or behave in certain ways, or we're holding this on ourselves. And in both cases, there might be this fear, this resistance of just like looking at things head on, because we have these expectations that are established, and the expectations in Libra are an issue. When expectations are just sort of assumed, and oftentimes these assumed expectations, there's like an unspoken agreement about them, but they were never explicitly actually agreed upon. And you can go years with these unspoken agreements, and everyone's just sort of playing the roles that they're playing. And it's almost like it's a violation or it's wrong to break out of these unspoken agreements. This might be a thing to really give attention to. Again, Mercury, Juno wants us to give a refined, detailed awareness on where these contracts and these issues can come through. I haven't spoke to Juno too much. Maybe I can make another little video on it. But one issue that often happens with Juno that will be very highlighted during this eclipse window are the agreements that we make that kind of bind us up, right? So we kind of get stuck and we lose some level of our own agency and sovereignty within these agreements. On the one hand, this might be an issue that we need to like break out of, right? Free ourselves up. But on the other hand, Juno can also speak to where we can be making certain commitments and joining with others in very deep and intimate ways that can actually open up deeper soul realm, deeper soul intimacy. So like, what's the teaching? What's the flow between this I got to break free and I got to commit? There's really not much of a difference between the two. Because when we come into our relationship from a place of respect and trust and gratitude for the gift that we have, we recognize every relationship already is a commitment. It's just a matter of our agreements, the words we're speaking, the expectations that we're establishing in harmony with what's truly of service to each soul in their journey. But stay true to the commitment of each relationship, that we are here to see it through together. And then we allow the particular arrangement to be navigated with clear self-leadership. That's very important with Libra in the 7th house. Libra in the 8th house. So now we're looking at the realm of deep emotional, psychological involvement. We're going to form bonds and enter into deep sexual, emotional relationships and form attachments to people. That's a part of this soul journey. But what happens when those attachments become a source of fundamental emotional security? We might find ourselves consumed with a fundamental and unchecked, unexplored insecurity, fear of being betrayed, fear of losing, jealousy, envy. All of these dynamics might be emerging, and we need to become psychologically self-aware here. Otherwise, we'll bring our deepest insecurities into our relationship. Why did you look at that person? Because I was driving and they were in front of me. Everything can become the point of permeating fear and insecurity. Now, why did you call that person? Because I'm buying a car and they're selling it. So we can perceive a world out there that becomes a validation of the underlying fears that we're not processing on the inside. And anyone can do or not do or say anything. They kind of validate that we're going to be hurt. We're fundamentally insecure. We're going to be betrayed. Now, the other side to that is we might actually be completely stuck or entangled within a relationship where we're feeding another person's need for power. We are giving our soul agency, our sovereignty, away to another person because that's how we're going to get loved and feel wanted and feel good. But that's sort of like getting into an addictive pattern where we're stuck on something that's actually taking energy away from us. It's not connecting us to our own soul agency, our actual true freedom. So these dynamics of holding on, grabbing, manipulating, deeply afraid, deeply jealous, deeply possessive, or just sort of diminishing our own self-value and being stuck in dynamics where we're afraid to be in our power. And, we can get very extreme with Libra in the 8th house. This is the issue. We might be really drawn towards someone and something in that the power of desire, 8th house, will lead us. Like, I got to be with that person. I got to get there, In the same way, we might feel deeply limited or stuck, and we might come from this very insecure place where we think we have to be all or nothing. Like, I'm done with you. Yet, both patterns kind of create their own karma. It's either giving into craving or giving into aversion. Neither dynamic points us to our power or our soul agency. So the piece here is clear, honest, very engaged, authentic communication. And that Aries in the 2nd house is I'm fundamentally free and secure on my own, whether or not I'm meeting the needs, expectations, desires, agreements, projections of the other person. This can allow, in a positive way, for deep soul bonding, like soul level intimacy, soul level emotional sexual connection, where the coming together allows for a true transmutation of energy. But that only happens when all of the fears and the content is honestly brought forward in the open. Otherwise, when we're keeping that stuff hidden, but we're maintaining deep connection, it's very volatile. It doesn't really bring growth because it just kind of keeps us in that place of holding on to the pattern itself. We don't really grow. But when all of the fear or the jealousy or the envy or the entrapment is brought forward, all of that psychological content where two people are able to meet it and see it, not grab onto it, not try to fix it, not try to fall into old patterns relative to it, that allows for true intimacy because then two souls can choose to share a journey together where there is a deep emotional bond and commitment to being together without it being influenced and dictated by the wealth of psychological content and fears that might otherwise motivate such relationships. Otherwise, this might be you bring forward the content and you realize, oh yeah, I've been living in this way and there's a sort of, I'm not being honest with my own soul. I'm sustaining certain patterns or behaviors or addictions to affinity. And, what happens when I change that? What happens when I withdraw that patterning from these relationships? There might be a fear of change. We have to be able to be open to these changes and to see what happens. Otherwise, we're going to stay stuck. So this eclipse can really bring forward a lot of clarity and psychological self-knowledge, potentially getting a lot closer, deeper bonds, deeper soul understanding and knowledge. Each soul from the point of view of there being a core soul contract within each relationship. This, again, similar to the 7th, says, I want to be completely committed to you to see this through, but we have to take full responsibility for our craving and our aversion and to see where we're holding on and where we might fundamentally be afraid of change. What happens when we choose to be even more honest with ourselves and with each other? All right, Libra in the 9th house. Libra in the 9th house, on the one hand, speaks to intimacy and authenticity through relationship, where the truth and intimacy are intertwined. Telling the truth, being honest, is like putting all of the cards on the table, and you don't know what's going to happen. Like, here's what's true. True about my feelings, true about my needs, true about what's going on for me. And it may or may not be what other people wanted. It may or may not mean you're going to have the expected results that you wanted, but it's all true. In fact, even that which you wanted, that's a part of the truth. I find with the 9th house in general, the truth can go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's all about how willing are we to not try to make an experience something other than what it is, contorting it to be what we're trying to make it. This idea of a relationship, or this idea of who I'm going to be and how it's going to go. There can be a lot of really great sounding ideas or something that was true a day ago, but is it right now actually true, or is it a concept that we're trying to convince ourselves of? For the need to be loved and approved and wanted, we can lie to ourselves and be something that we think we need to be within relationship. The issue is when we do that, we alienate ourselves. And it can actually create a situation where we're sort of looking for the next relationship experience or somewhere else or something else to do that will allow us to feel more free. So that whole grass is always greener situation. The key with Libra in the 9th house is to claim and embrace our total freedom right here, right now, within all of our relationships. And that's by telling the truth. In the context of Mercury and Juno there, new phase with the South Node, say what you got to say. Bring all of the content on the table and listen without trying to. This is the other dynamic. Convince the other person about what you think they should know. Don't become the person's teacher, right? Don't become the teacher counselor that has all the answers, nor should you lie to yourself or fall into patterns of being the person that maybe your partner or the other person is the teacher for you. We got to stay authentic and allow everyone to be authentic, even if it's not who we think we wanted to be or how we wanted it to go. The Aries 3rd house polarity is be a leader in expressing your voice. Speak your truth, follow your thought, use your own critical thinking too. Right? Don't just go along with a bunch of beliefs or ideas that are believable or convincing or that sound good. Speak your truth. Don't be afraid to say what you need to say, even if it's going to mean it's not going to sustain the same level of affinity. The addiction here could be to, I want to make sure I'm understood. That need to be understood is a little bit of a dishonesty, because if you're identified with the need to be understood, you may not allow yourself to be completely honest. So in order to be understood, you have to be willing to not be understood. So that Aries 3rd house is instinctive. Say what you got to say. Don't worry about being understood or being liked. Then it really allows for all relationships to be seen clearly. Like you're on this spiritual journey. And relationship is a pilgrimage of ongoing expansion and realization and growth. And it's exciting, right? It's like, wow, like what's possible? What is it like to see my spiritual journey as a path of deepening of honesty and intimacy and radical, authentic presence and transparency? It's a beautiful attitude to have, where all of our relationships can be understood as a space of spiritual realization and growth if we have the proper orientation to our life in that way. Libra in the 10th house. So the issue here is this can really emphasize a very strong sensitivity to the social roles and conditions, things that maybe we've inherited or learned, the conditioning that we have around what's appropriate, how to behave, who to be. So in the context of personal relationship, it can be on the most basic level, gender roles or gender constructs. This is how I'm supposed to behave as a man or a woman, or, you know, these are the rules. If I've gone on the 3rd date, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do. Where we become overly identified with roles, which then become these unspoken social expectations that we have embraced or that we project on others. I can't believe this person didn't call me or text me, or they're not acting this way. Well, who said they needed to? Right? Just because they're this gender or you're that gender, or these are the things that your society does. Intimacy is lost when we just fall into projecting upon ourselves or other people these rules around how we're supposed to behave relative to one another. And this is different if we're in an agreed context. So Libra in the 10th can be a professional counselor, right? Or a mediator or a peace worker, or, someone that's working in the realms of justice, supporting people to nurture fairness and rightness in their lives. So in the case of playing these roles, this could be a very helpful mechanism of really having these boundaries, knowing this is my role here, this is your role here. And these roles or these trainings might actually be very necessary, right? The roles and the trainings can become a way of learning how to appropriately manifest yourself within particular roles or frameworks or conditions in ways that are truly helpful, right? Being the counselor is helpful if you're in a consensual relationship where your role is to be the counselor. It is not necessarily helpful if that's just who you are in your relationships, because you're the responsible counselor and people are depending upon you to be the counselor. That would be more like you're the adult in the relationship, and then someone else, similar to the 4th house dynamic, like you're always the adult, making sure everyone's safe and protected. Or the opposite, right? You're always looking for someone to be your mother or your father to, help make sure that you feel good. Maybe there's a deep sensitivity to being judged, and you need to constantly be affirmed and told you're a good person, you're not being judged. Getting involved in different techniques, trainings, and modalities where you can work with these roles, right? Where one person's going to be playing the parental role or the counselor role. One person is going to be playing the child role. There might be a deep need with Libra in the 10th house to access the emotional chaos, Aries in the 4th, so I can find out who I am when I'm not constantly repressed and focusing on who I'm supposed to be, right? Another dimension is, just it's not okay for me to have needs, right? I can't ask for this, or it's not polite. All these ways in which, or I can't have desires. So a lot of, again, like social conditioning and gender constructs can be put into this. I can't want what I'm wanting, or I can't have these certain desires. It's not appropriate. I'm going to be judged if I say or want certain things. So that Aries in the 4th house is, I need to be able to just be myself, be more emotionally volatile at times, be more instinctive, and having the containers or the grounds or the consent within our relationships to explore that might be very helpful. So again, one person can be, I'm going to hold you and be there for you while you just discharge emotionally. So you can just be yourself and not feel like you always need to be holding this incredible sense of responsibility and pressure to be the right kind of person, to do it right, to say it right, to be responsible. Or I'm going to hold the position of the counselor and the guide right now, but that's a consensual experience. I'm not just always defaulting towards that because that's who I had to be when I was growing up because no one was responsible for me, So another dynamic with Libra in the 10th, and just getting really clear around these roles and having that kind of communication. Hey, is this working for you? What are you needing? And where can we embrace new structural realities that allows everyone to get their needs met and then relieve some of the pressure that we might have otherwise placed on each other to play these roles? I can't emphasize enough when we have strong 10th house content, how much unchecked conditioning often comes along with it. Because we learned certain things growing up and we've developed these adoptive behaviors, and we might just assume that's how it is. That's what you do in relationship. But intimacy is lost when we just fall into certain patterns and we don't really check them or bring them into conscious communication. The last thing that I'll say here is this really might open up the doors if you're a healer or a guide or a counselor to really explore and strengthen the container of your work. You might be called to really train or develop more competency in your space holding skills. Learning more about a lot of people, of course, that maybe didn't get their needs met will find themselves going into counseling roles later in life. There's something very healing in that. And at the same time, it is sometimes a way of kind of playing out the same patterns from early life. So there might be a re-looking at our professional roles and the things that we've been doing in life, realizing, I don't have to do this for people. Is there another expression, another way that I can discipline and develop myself within relationships where I'm playing less of the role of the parent all the time, but I get to sort of open up to more of what's inside when these rules and these roles are a little bit softened. Being able to re-examine the pressure and the responsibilities that we may have placed on ourselves and see what's there when we let go of that obligation or that guilt or that sense of responsibility that might partially be influenced by unresolved early conditioning. One more thing I'll say about Libra in the 10th house is where boundaries might need to be embraced, okay? This might be implied, but where there's a sort of default expectation, you do this, I do this, the conversations and the agreements need to be, hey, here are some boundaries. These are the things that I'm doing with my life. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is what's going to work. This is what's not going to work. To be able to receive that feedback without feeling overwhelmed or debilitated by judgment or fear, and to be able to offer that feedback without being overly concerned with losing another person's approval or acceptance. Being able to nurture and responsibly engage our relationships so that the structural realities and how we're working with our own time in life are balanced. And we're not polarized in these unspoken agreements that we really don't need to be sustaining any further. Libra in the 11th house. What's interesting about Libra in the 11th house is we're freeing our mind from all kinds of conditioned ideas or notions around what relationship is in the first place and who we're supposed to be. This says that relationship fundamentally is a matter of resonance, of vibrational attraction and connection. We come together with people because there's something within our own soul that resonates together, and there's going to be a sharing that allows for a greater harmony and inclusivity that nurtures all of our own growth. When we become overly identified with, I need to be included, I need to be accepted, we're going to suppress our own individuality. We'll be subduing our own vibration on the basis of wanting to be included. And so one dynamic that can be emerging here is where we're feeling stifled within our relationships. Perhaps we're very afraid of rejection, or we carry this memory of being told, you're too different, or like, you're weird, I don't want to be with you, right? The 11th house dynamic also corresponding to groups of people, where we were rejected because people didn't want to be around us. And so there might be the sense of, I don't want to be an outsider. I don't want to be different. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to belong and to be a part of the group. So whether it's a community of people or our own one-on-one personal relationships, we need to look at where have we denied who we are just to fit and belong. And the truth is, every soul from an 11th house point of view is going to have such individual needs and orientations that their unique nature is never going to be fully reflected by that of another. Me and you and all of us, we reflect elements that resonate with one another, but then there are these qualities that are just brilliantly unique unto themselves, and we don't have to be the same. We can reflect, oh, that's so cool, that's your way, this is your unique movement in life. And there are always going to be other people and other relationships in life that meet us in certain ways and others that meet us in other ways. The key is to not keep ourselves so conditioned and stuck to fit into some kind of box of belonging that will never be right for us and is actually never really right for anyone. If you think of any group of people or political group or a social group, right? You're never going to find total resonance in terms of our values and our needs and our feelings with everyone in the group. Most cases, the people in the group will just suppress their uniqueness for the sake of belonging. This can really bring forward a lot of stress, a feeling of dissociation and disconnect and just like anxiety. If we're sustaining a life that just isn't ours, we're going to feel like an alien, like we don't really belong, like we're fundamentally an outsider. And that can either lead to a sort of dissociative, I'm in a relationship but I'm checked out, or like just suddenly one day picking up and leaving and projecting, you're holding me back, we can't get along, we're not going to work together, things like that. So to embrace that Aries in the 5th house is to say, I'm going to be true and bold and courageous in being just what I am. I'm going to shine in the light of my own individuality. And I love myself and I see myself. It's okay if others don't understand me. It's okay if I'm like an anomaly to the group, or if I don't fit other people's projections or needs. We need to be very mindful with Libra in the 11th house of the issue of projections. On the one hand, we can project onto other people like, oh, they're going to exclude me, they're going to reject me, I'm not going to get along, I'm not going to be invited, I'm not going to be included. because we're holding this trauma of being an outsider. And so we might always be excluding ourselves from contributing our unique gifts, all the ways that we can enhance our relationships and our communities, because we're just telling ourselves that we don't belong, right? Or where we're overly identified with other people's projections, that we think, well, because people are projecting these ideas or these concepts on us that isn't true for us, we can't really be ourselves. So we're going to just pick up and leave, or we'll suppress ourselves for the sake of belonging. Freeing our mind from projection means cultivating more of an observer consciousness. See everything, but don't believe any of your stories about it. Witness your relationships. Witness the dramas that want to come, right, that want to grab you in, but stay clear-minded. That might mean at times you're not operating on the same subjective level that other people are expecting you to, but it's okay. You can still remain true to yourself, even if other people aren't expecting that. We're always going to resonate vibrationally other people that resonate with our nature when we're honoring and being true to our own nature. So we can find, on the one hand, sort of a growth of friendships, meaningful relationships, and community, where we're like, I can be who I am and I can embrace all of myself. And I don't have to subdue that or sacrifice or repress that in order to be a part of a community, in order to be liked. And we might also find ourselves kind of healing and liberating from the projections or the fears of not belonging, realizing that every single relationship, every single community is an ecosystem, and we're a part of all of it, and we're all a part of all of it. We might find ourselves at times deeply involved in certain ecosystems, or we might find ourselves just sort of brushing the outskirts of it. We don't have to push ourselves to be more involved in anything that doesn't feel natural or right to our own feeling body. So let all relationships and affinities naturally fall where they are, in resonance with the intelligence of creation, by just being more true and courageous and just being exactly what you are, and staying free of fear and projection and all kinds of ideas of outsiderness or insiderness, exclusion and exclusion. Lastly, Libra in the 12th house. The issue with Libra in the 12th house can be displacing a lot of ideals and expectations, hopes and wishes onto our relationships. On the one hand, you're going to be this perfectly immaculate divine being, and I see you as divine, but then I can lose my discrimination, lose healthy discernment, and just go along with what you are, with what you're wanting me to be, with whatever you're feeling and needing. So the principle of surrender then becomes sort of displaced in a sort of non-discerning, going with the flow, and just merging with, blending with whoever the other person is and whoever the other person wants us to be. Another expression could be wanting this idealized form of relationship, right? We can lose a ground and a connection to life and to this present moment because we're idealizing how another person will come in someday and save us. That means when we meet another person, it's going to be very easy for us to not listen to who they actually are, their actual reality, what's really true, because we're just seeing the divine in them. So all kinds of issues where we just become very idealistic and then lose a healthy discernment. This then, eclipse, can be bringing up a lot of disillusionment. I've been in a relationship with you for 20 years and I don't even know who you are. It's because perhaps you were telling yourself something that was true the entire time that wasn't. And this doesn't mean that this other person isn't deserving of unconditional love. It means you didn't know what love actually meant. We associated love with a particular condition, and then you brought forward that condition as something that has to fundamentally and always be true. And the removal of that condition means you then get confused. Where's the love? So there's a realignment here. What does it look like to love you? What does it look like to love and to be loved? To surrender to the truth? It means, this really brings forward that, the inherent inconjunct between the Pisces and the Libra archetype. Loving you is a fundamental commitment to seeing who you truly are, but it's also somewhat impersonal. You might be the person filling gas at the gas station, the person I'm buying bread from, or my spouse of 30 years. it's indiscriminate, or my child. When it comes to the Libra dimension, there's discrimination and discernment for how to be in each relationship in a way that's truly helpful and in service. We're learning to devote each relationship to higher meaning beyond our own making. And that might or might not mean getting the needs met that we wanted, or being the savior, or another person being the savior that we wanted them to be. Very often, Libra in the 12th will mean not meeting other people's needs, where we can otherwise sacrifice ourselves to give. I love you, I'm going to give and give and give. And then people aren't receiving what we're giving, or they're not making any changes. And so we can feel very disillusioned. That Aries in the 6th house is, I need to discern and actively work on what is my work to do in life. I have a lot on my list. There's work, there's unfinished business here, and I need to tend to that. Otherwise, I'm always going to be drawn into giving and being what others want of me. And I can easily become very confused. With that lack of discrimination, I can kind of get drawn in all kinds of directions according to the waves of the ocean. In this case, the waves of the ocean being other people's projections, needs, or wants of us, or our own idealized ideas of who we're supposed to be for other people. So allowing everyone and everything to be exactly as it is, and not making up meaning on our own, means we're discerning, how can I be of service? What is my role? What is my purpose? There's this beautiful prayer in A Course in Miracles that I most days will kind of reconnect with. Today, bring me to whom you want me to be with, to say the words that you would want me to say. Where every relationship fundamentally is seen as, in the giving, I'm going to receive, but I'm giving that which you would have me receive. I'm giving the miracles that you would want to give to me as well. There's a ground in my relationship with the divine, and I'm allowing myself to be an instrument. So relationships can be spiritualized, where we recognize our essential unity. And there also might be a releasing and a letting go of the conditional hopes, expectations, and wishes that we've tried to put onto our relationships, because at some point down the road, we got confused about what love actually is. Another dynamic that can emerge with Libra in the 12th house is, as a result of giving and sort of sacrificing and martyring yourself and just trying to help others all the time, you might just sort of become numb. I don't care anymore. What's the point? Fine, go and suffer. And so again, this brings us back to, what does love actually look like? What is the way in which we can truly grow in intimacy through being an instrument of love? The teaching is, you are no different than me. So the ways in which we sustain separation are the ways in which we will sustain confusion. Separation is, you need help and I got to help you. There's a lot of separation in that. Separation is, you are this perfect, beautiful person, and I'm going to serve you and give you and give you and give you indiscriminately because of some kind of idealized dream that I have of you. Even though it doesn't look like there's separation, you're not just letting them be what they are, right? You're creating this image, this idea of what another is. So love is kind of powerful, and it's deeper than what any of us understand, and we can't invent it or decide on our own what it is. There also might be a need for forgiveness, right? Other people aren't who we wanted them to be. We're not who we thought we could be. A lot of our relationships, their ultimate highest purpose in life is forgiveness. We release each other from who we thought we needed to be and the ways that we've held each other in check in jail. And we say, I accept and surrender to who you are, what is. Your true self is one with mine. And I'm absolutely grateful for you. My love for you is eternal. And I surrender trying to control the conditions of this journey according to what I believed it should be. Forgiveness being, in some sense, the highest purpose of relationship. Because when we forgive each other, what's left but love? We're not holding on to the past. We're not anticipating the future. We can truly love. And what happens next is an extension or an expression of wholeness and unity. It doesn't need to be found anymore. All right, and this completes my look at this eclipse through the 12 houses. As always, thank you so much for watching.